My mother looked me straight in the eyes, pushed a thick leather folder across the dining table, and said in a voice so calm it was almost frightening, "Your sister's divorce lawyer wants a $22,000 retainer by tomorrow morning. You're paying it. Family takes care of family." For a few seconds, I honestly thought she was joking. Then I looked down at the contract. There it was in bold letters. Retainer due, $22,000. My mother wasn't smiling. She was serious. When I quietly told her no, she didn't yell or argue. Instead, she gave me a strange little smile that I had learned to fear since childhood. It was the same smile she wore whenever she believed she had already won. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and left the house convinced the argument was over. I had absolutely no idea that while I was washing my hands before leaving, my mother had secretly reached into my handbag and taken something she believed would force me to pay anyway. Less than 12 hours later, my phone rang. My younger sister was crying so hard she could barely breathe. "Emma, Mom made a terrible mistake. Everything is falling apart." That single phone call exposed a secret our family had hidden for years and changed every relationship we had forever. My name is Emma Carter. I'm 30 years old, and for most of my life I believed hard work solved everything. I earned scholarships, worked double shifts during college, built a successful career as a financial compliance manager, and spent years creating a stable future for myself. My younger sister, Lily, was 26 and had lived a completely different life. She had always been our mother's favorite. If Lily wanted a new car, Mom somehow found the money. If Lily quit another job because her boss was too stressful, Mom insisted she just hadn't found the right opportunity yet. Whenever I achieved something, it was expected. Whenever Lily accomplished the smallest thing, it was celebrated like she had conquered the world. I learned very early that our family had invisible rules. Lily received support, carried responsibility. If the washing machine broke, I was expected to pay for repairs. If Mom forgot her property taxes, she somehow expected me to help. Every financial emergency magically became my responsibility because, according to Mom, I was the successful one. For years I convinced myself that helping family was simply the right thing to do. I ignored birthdays I had sacrificed, vacations I canceled, promotions I nearly lost because I was constantly cleaning up someone else's problems. Eventually I realized something painful. They weren't asking because they needed help anymore. They were asking because they believed they were entitled to my success. 3 weeks before that dinner, Lily filed for divorce after only 18 months of marriage. Her husband, Ryan, owned a small construction company that had grown rapidly over the previous 2 years. According to my mother, Ryan had hidden assets, manipulated bank accounts, and was trying to leave Lily with nothing. Whether that was true or not, I honestly didn't know. I had stayed completely out of their marriage because every disagreement somehow turned into a family war. Still, I genuinely felt sorry for Lily. Divorce is painful, no matter whose fault it is. But feeling sympathy didn't mean writing a check for $22,000. That Tuesday evening my mother called saying she wanted a small family dinner. Those words almost made me laugh because in our family there was never such a thing as a peaceful dinner. Every invitation came with expectations attached. Even so, a small part of me hoped things had changed. Maybe Mom simply wanted to reconnect. Maybe Lily needed emotional support instead of financial support. Against my better judgment, I drove across town through heavy rain and arrived exactly at 6:30. The house looked exactly as it had 20 years earlier. Family photographs covered every wall. Most of them featured Lily standing proudly in the center while I stood somewhere near the edge. I used to think that was an accident. As an adult, I realized it perfectly reflected our family dynamic. Mom greeted me with an unusually warm hug. That alone should have warned me something was wrong. Dinner was almost silent. She barely asked about my work. Lily avoided eye contact the entire meal, nervously pushing vegetables around her plate. The atmosphere felt heavy, as if everyone already knew how the evening would end except me. The moment dessert plates were cleared away, my mother reached beside her chair, lifted a leather folder onto the table, and slowly slid it toward me. "Open it." Inside was a contract from one of the most expensive divorce law firms in the city. The first page listed attorney fees. The second outlined legal strategy. The final page showed the amount due by the next morning. $22,000. Mom folded her hands together. Lily deserves the best representation money can buy. I looked from the contract to my sister. Lily, did you ask for this? She hesitated. Mom said you'd understand. That answer told me everything. My mother leaned forward. You make excellent money. You don't have children. You own your apartment. Your investments are doing well. You're the only person in this family who can help. I closed the folder. I can help in other ways. I can recommend attorneys. I can help review financial documents. But I'm not paying $22,000. Mom's expression hardened instantly. So your own sister isn't worth it. This isn't about worth. It certainly sounds like it. It's about responsibility. Lily's husband is trying to destroy her. And that doesn't automatically make me financially responsible. Mom's voice became sharper. You've always been selfish with money. I almost laughed. Selfish. That word had followed me since I was 16 years old and started working after school while my friends spent weekends relaxing. Every dollar I saved somehow became evidence that I wasn't generous enough. I've spent years helping this family, I replied calmly. I've paid bills, repaired your roof, covered medical expenses, and loaned money that was never repaid. I won't fund someone else's divorce. Lily finally spoke. I'll pay you back. I looked at her gently. With what income? She lowered her eyes. Silence filled the room. Mom suddenly slammed her hand onto the table so hard the glasses rattled. I cannot believe this. After everything this family has done for you. I stared at her. What exactly has this family done for me? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Because we both knew the answer. I stood up and picked up my purse. I'm leaving. If you walk out that door, Mom shouted, don't expect us to ever ask you for anything again. I smiled sadly. I was hoping for exactly that. Before leaving, I excused myself to use the downstairs bathroom. I splashed cold water across my face and stared into the mirror. Part of me felt guilty. Another part felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, I had protected my own boundaries. When I returned to the hallway, Mom was standing beside the front table where I had briefly left my purse. The moment she saw me, she stepped away almost too quickly. Something felt off. But I couldn't explain why. I picked up my handbag, hugged Lily goodbye despite everything, received nothing but a cold stare from Mom, and walked into the rainy evening. Driving home, I kept replaying the conversation in my mind. Had I been too harsh? Should I have offered a smaller amount? Should I have handled it differently? Those thoughts followed me until I finally fell asleep shortly before midnight. At exactly 1:18 a.m., my phone exploded with notifications. One alert, then another, then 5 more in less than 30 seconds. My heart immediately began racing. I reached for my phone. Every notification came from my financial institution. Urgent security alert. High-value transaction attempt detected. Verification required immediately. Still half asleep, I sat upright in bed as another alert appeared on my screen. The transaction amount made my stomach tighten. $22,000. For one terrifying moment, I believed someone had emptied my personal account. Then another notification arrived. This one was different. It wasn't simply warning me about unusual activity. It stated that the transaction had been automatically blocked, escalated for investigation, and forwarded to a specialized security review team. I threw off my blanket, rushed to the hallway, grabbed my purse and opened my wallet. Every personal debit card was exactly where it belonged. Every personal credit card was untouched. Then I noticed something missing. One card. The one I almost never used. The realization hit me like ice. I whispered to myself. No. She couldn't have. But deep inside, I already knew exactly who had taken it. And I knew that if my suspicion was correct, my mother had just made the biggest mistake of her entire life. At exactly 7:15 the following morning, my phone lit up with Lily's name. The moment I answered, I couldn't even say hello before hearing broken sobs on the other end. "Emma!" she cried between gasps for air. "Please. Please don't hang up." I immediately sat upright in bed. "Lily, slow down. What's wrong?" "Our lawyer. They cancelled everything." "What do you mean?" "They refused to accept us as clients." For a moment I thought I had misunderstood. "The law firm cancelled your case." "Not just them," she whispered through tears. "They're talking about reporting Mom." A cold feeling settled in my chest. "What happened?" Lily took several shaky breaths before answering. "Mom texted me just after midnight. She said, 'Don't worry. I handled the payment. Emma won't have a choice now.' I thought maybe you had changed your mind." Closed my eyes. "I never authorized anything. I know that now." "What exactly did Mom do?" "The law firm's accounting department called me 30 minutes ago. They said someone tried paying the $22,000 retainer using a financial card that immediately triggered a high-risk fraud alert. The payment never went through. Instead, their compliance department froze our file until they could verify whether the payment involved identity theft." I said nothing. Lily continued. "They asked if I knew who owned the card. I told them I didn't. Then they asked whether my mother had permission to use it." Her voice cracked again. I didn't know what to say. The room became completely silent. Finally, she whispered the question I had been expecting. "Emma, did Mom take something from your purse?" I slowly looked toward my handbag sitting on the hallway table. "Yes." Lily began crying even harder. "Oh my God. I think she did." There was another long silence. Then Lily spoke in a voice I had never heard before. "I'm so sorry." Those 4 words stunned me. My sister had apologized. Not because our mother told her to. Not because she wanted money. But because she genuinely understood something terrible had happened. Before I could respond, another call came through. I told Lily I'd call her back and answered. The screaming started instantly. "Emma, what did you do? I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't play innocent with me." She sounded completely frantic. "That ridiculous security department froze the payment and embarrassed me in front of everyone. You need to call them immediately and tell them the charge was authorized." I remained perfectly calm. "Mom. What? Did you take a card from my purse?" There was complete silence. For nearly 5 seconds she said nothing. Then she answered. "I borrowed it." "No. I was going to tell you." "No, Mom. I knew you'd calm down after sleeping on it. You stole it. You are seriously going to accuse your own mother of stealing? You secretly removed a financial card from my purse without permission. I only did it because you forced me. I forced you. If you had simply acted like family, none of this would have happened. 4 years those words would have made me doubt myself. Not anymore." I walked into my kitchen and poured a cup of coffee before speaking again. "Tell me exactly what you did." She hesitated. "I called the attorney's office. And I gave them the card information. Anything else? They wanted verification." "What did you tell them?" "I said I had permission." Closed my eyes. Every answer made the situation worse. "Mom. What? You didn't take one of my personal credit cards." "I know. You know. I assumed it was one of your premium business cards." My heart skipped. "So you knew it wasn't personal. It shouldn't matter. Money is money." "No. It absolutely matters." She became impatient. "Emma, stop making this complicated." "I'm not making it complicated." "You are." "No, Mom." I took a slow breath. "You attempted to use a restricted financial account that requires authorization protocols for large transactions. That's why everything was immediately flagged. Her confidence disappeared. What does that mean? It means the payment wasn't simply declined. What? It triggered an internal security investigation. Silence. Emma. They now believe someone attempted to make an unauthorized payment. Her breathing became noticeably faster. But I explained. You explained after presenting yourself as someone authorized to use a card that wasn't yours. I didn't know. I warned you yesterday that I wasn't paying. You left me no choice. You always had a choice. She whispered. Am I in trouble? I looked out the kitchen window at the steady morning rain. I don't know yet. Those 5 words completely changed her tone. For the first time in my life, my mother sounded afraid. She wasn't afraid of disappointing anyone. She wasn't afraid of hurting me. She was afraid of consequences. Emma. Please fix this. I can't. You have to. No. You owe your family. I owe honesty. She began crying. Not loud dramatic crying. Quiet panic. Please. I've never been in trouble before. I almost answered immediately. Then I remembered every time she had ignored my own tears growing up. Every birthday cancelled because Lily wanted something more expensive. Every paycheck I handed over. Every sacrifice that was treated like an obligation instead of kindness. For years, my feelings had never been considered. Now she expected mine to erase hers. I'm not lying for anyone, she whispered. They could ruin my life. I answered softly. You made that decision yesterday. She hung up. An hour later I received another phone call. This time it came from an unfamiliar number. Good morning. May I speak with Emma Carter? This is Emma. My name is Rebecca. I'm calling from Henderson and Cole Family Law. My stomach tightened. We're reviewing yesterday evening's attempted payment. I understand. We're not accusing you of wrongdoing. I appreciate that. We simply need to verify one detail. Go ahead. Did you authorize anyone else to submit that payment on your behalf? No. Thank you. Another brief pause followed. Our records indicate the individual identified herself as your mother. That's correct. We also have security footage from our reception area. Blink. Security footage. Yes. The individual completed part of the payment verification process in person. That surprised me. Mom had actually gone to the office herself. Rebecca continued professionally. We're primarily concerned with protecting all parties involved. Based on your statement, we'll suspend further processing while our compliance team completes its review. I understand. Thank you for your cooperation. The call ended. I stood quietly in my living room. Everything had escalated much further than I expected. This was no longer just another family argument. Professional offices were now involved. Compliance teams were reviewing documents. Security footage existed. And for the first time in decades, my mother's actions couldn't simply be explained away inside the family. Real evidence existed. About 20 minutes later, someone knocked on my apartment door. When I opened it, Lily was standing there. Her eyes were swollen. Mascara streaked her cheeks. She looked exhausted. Without saying a single word, she stepped forward and hugged me. It was the first genuine hug my sister had given me in years. As she cried against my shoulder, she whispered something that completely changed how I saw her. Emma. I didn't know Mom had been using us against each other all these years. I slowly wrapped my arms around her. 'Cause for the first time, I realized the biggest problem in our family had never been favoritism alone. It was manipulation. And neither of us had escaped it. Lily remained standing in my apartment doorway for several seconds after our hug ended. She looked like someone who hadn't slept all night. Her hands were trembling as she clutched a small envelope against her chest. I need to show you something, she said quietly. I stepped aside and let her in. Neither of us spoke while I made 2 cups of coffee. The silence between us felt different than it ever had before. It wasn't filled with resentment anymore. It was filled with questions. When we finally sat across from each other at the kitchen table, Lily carefully placed the envelope in front of me. "I found this in Mom's bedroom this morning." I frowned. "What is it?" "I think it's why she was so desperate to get your money." I slowly opened the envelope. Inside were several overdue notices, a stack of unopened bills, and a letter from a private lender. The final page immediately caught my attention. Final demand before legal collection. The amount owed made my eyes widen. $118,400. I looked back at Lily. "What is this?" She swallowed hard. "I didn't know any of it existed." I continued reading. The documents showed that over the last 3 years, my mother had taken out multiple personal loans. Some had interest rates so high they were almost impossible to repay. Others had been secured using property she no longer fully owned. Why would Mom borrow this much money? Yes. Lily lowered her head. "I think she was trying to keep up appearances." Suddenly, dozens of memories made sense. The expensive vacations, the luxury handbags, the remodeled kitchen, the parties she hosted every holiday. She had always claimed she was good with money. The paperwork told a completely different story. Lily's voice shook. "I confronted her this morning." "What did she say?" "She blamed you." I couldn't help letting out a tired laugh. "Of course she did. She said if you had just paid the $22,000, none of this would have happened." I leaned back in my chair. "So the lawyer wasn't the real problem." Lily slowly nodded. "No. She needed someone else to solve her financial mess. And she thought using me would keep anyone from discovering the truth." Lily looked ashamed. "I honestly believed she was only trying to protect me during the divorce." I reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand. "You didn't know." She nodded. "But I should have." Before either of us could say another word, my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail notification. The caller ID belonged to my mother. I played the message on speaker. "Emma, please call me back. I've made mistakes. I know that. But strangers are calling the house asking questions. Someone from the lender came by this morning. Lily isn't answering me. Please. We need to fix this together." The message ended. Lily stared at the table. I've never heard her sound like that. Neither have I. Just then another call came in. This time it was Ryan, Lily's soon-to-be ex-husband. She looked surprised. "I should answer." He nodded. She placed the phone on speaker. "Hello." Ryan sounded exhausted. "Lily, I just heard what happened." She took a deep breath. "I'm sorry." "No," he replied. "You don't owe me an apology." She looked confused. "I don't. I know your mother has been blaming me for everything." The room fell silent. Ryan continued. "I wasn't hiding money." Lily's eyes widened. "What?" "I offered to show you every financial record months ago." She looked at me in disbelief. "You refused," Ryan continued gently, "because your mother kept telling you I'd forged documents." Lily covered her mouth. I thought. "I know what you thought." Another long silence followed. Then Ryan said something none of us expected. "Emma, are you there?" "I am." "I think you deserve to know something." "I'm listening." "The day your mother asked me for money, she told me that if I really cared about Lily, I'd give her $50,000 to help her daughter start over." Lily's face turned completely pale. "She what?" "I refused. So she started telling everyone I was hiding assets." The room became eerily quiet. For the first time, both of us realized our mother hadn't just manipulated us. She had manipulated everyone around her. After the call ended, Lily burst into tears again. "I destroyed my marriage." I gently shook my head. "No, you don't understand." "I do. I believed every word she said. Because you trusted your mother." She buried her face in her hands. "I don't even know who she is anymore." Neither did I. That afternoon we drove together to our mother's house. For years I had imagined confronting her. Now that moment had finally arrived. She opened the front door before we even knocked. The moment she saw both of us standing together, her expression changed. She immediately understood something had shifted. For the first time, her daughters were standing on the same side. "Girls," she said nervously. Lily stepped forward first. "Did you ask Ryan for $50,000? Mom froze. Answer me. I was trying to help you. Did you? Yes. Did you tell me he was hiding money after he refused?" Mom didn't answer. Lily asked again. "Did you lie to me?" Tears filled Mom's eyes. "I only wanted the best for you." "That's not an answer." "Finley," she whispered. "Yes." Lily staggered backward as if she'd been physically struck. Every belief she had built over years collapsed in a matter of seconds. I quietly placed the envelope of loan documents onto the hallway table. "We know about these too." Mom's eyes immediately locked onto the papers. "Where did you get those?" "So they're real." She didn't answer. "Is it?" She slowly sat down in the hallway chair. She suddenly looked much older than I remembered. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she whispered. "No," I replied calmly. "You just expected someone else to pay for it." She lowered her head. For nearly a full minute, nobody spoke. Then the front doorbell rang. All three of us looked toward the entrance. Mom frowned. "I wasn't expecting anyone." She opened the door. A man in a dark suit stood outside holding a folder. "Mrs. Brenda Carter." "Yes. I'm here regarding several outstanding financial matters that require your immediate attention." Mom's face lost every bit of color. The man calmly continued. "If we can't resolve these today, additional legal action may begin next week." He handed her several documents, then quietly walked away. Mom stood frozen in the doorway. The papers shook violently in her hands. For the first time in her life, there was no one left to blame. Not Ryan. Not Lily. Not me. Only herself. As Lily and I walked back toward my car, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I spent years thinking you were the reason this family was falling apart." I smiled sadly. "And now?" She looked back at the house one final time. "Now I know you were the only one trying to hold it together." I didn't answer, because deep inside, I knew the hardest conversation of all was still waiting for us. And by the time it happened, nothing in our family would ever be the same again. As Lily and I drove away from our mother's house, neither of us spoke. The windshield wipers swept away the steady rain, but nothing could erase the truth we had uncovered that afternoon. For years we believed we were fighting each other. In reality, we had both been reacting to stories carefully shaped by someone we trusted most. That evening, I returned to my apartment feeling emotionally exhausted. I had barely changed into comfortable clothes when my phone buzzed again. It was a text from my mother. "Please come over tomorrow morning. I need to tell both of you everything. No lies this time." I stared at the message for several minutes before replying with a single sentence. "Lily will be there. We'll listen." The next morning we arrived together. The house felt unusually quiet. There were no candles burning, no cheerful music playing, and no perfectly arranged decorations. It was the first time I had ever seen my mother's home without the carefully maintained image she always presented to the world. She was sitting at the dining table with several folders spread out in front of her. When we sat down, she looked at both of us and quietly said, "I've spent 20 years trying to convince everyone that everything was perfect." No one interrupted. She slowly opened the first folder. Inside were bank statements, loan agreements, overdue notices, and credit card balances stretching back years. "I started borrowing money after your father passed away," she admitted. "At first it was only a few $1,000s. Then I borrowed more to pay those loans. Every time I fell behind, I convinced myself that one more loan would fix everything." She looked directly at Lily. "When your friends started posting expensive vacations and weddings online, I wanted people to believe our family was just as successful. Then she turned toward me. You became successful, Emma. And instead of being proud, I began depending on you. Every time you rescued me, I told myself it was only temporary. I listened quietly. She wasn't making excuses anymore. She was finally telling the truth. Tears rolled down her face. I stopped seeing your kindness as a gift. I started believing it was something I deserved. Those words hung heavily in the room. For the first time, she had admitted the very thing I had been trying to explain for years. Lily spoke softly. So, none of this was really about my divorce. Our mother slowly shook her head. No, the lawyer was only the latest crisis. The $22,000 would have helped cover other debts too. Lily closed her eyes. I can't believe this. Neither could I. Just then the doorbell rang. My mother looked confused. I think that's them. She opened the front door. Standing outside were two representatives from the lending company she owed money to. They weren't rude or aggressive. They simply explained that they had come to discuss repayment options before legal proceedings moved forward. To my surprise, they weren't demanding immediate payment. They offered structured repayment plans, financial counseling resources, and alternatives that could prevent further legal action if she cooperated honestly. After they left, my mother quietly sat back down. I spent years lying because I thought admitting failure would destroy me. I answered gently. No, the lies almost did. She nodded. I know. Over the following weeks, our family changed in ways I never imagined possible. Lily officially changed attorneys and hired a respected local lawyer she could actually afford. She also found a full-time job and began supporting herself financially for the first time in years. Several months later, she called me with good news. I signed the papers today. The divorce is final. Yes. How do you feel? She smiled through the phone. Free. It was the strongest I had ever heard her sound. As for my mother, rebuilding trust proved much harder. She entered financial counseling, sold several expensive possessions she had bought only to impress others, and downsized to a smaller home she could realistically afford. Most importantly, she stopped asking me for money. Not once. Instead, if she needed advice, she asked questions. If she made a mistake, she admitted it. If she couldn't afford something, she simply said no. It wasn't a perfect transformation. There were uncomfortable conversations. There were moments when old habits tried to return. But every time that happened, Lily and I stood together. We had learned something incredibly important. Healthy families don't survive because one person sacrifices everything. They survive because everyone accepts responsibility for their own choices. About a year later, the three of us met for dinner at a small neighborhood restaurant. Nothing extravagant. No expensive reservations. No pressure. Just three women sharing a quiet meal. Halfway through dinner, my mother looked at me. I owe you something. I smiled slightly. You don't owe me money. She shook her head. No. I owe you an apology. The restaurant became completely silent around our table. I'm sorry for making you feel like your only value was what you could provide. She turned toward Lily. And I'm sorry for teaching you that someone else would always solve your problems. Tears filled all of our eyes. Not because everything had been erased, but because healing had finally begun. When dinner ended, my mother reached for the bill. Lily laughed. I've got half. Smiled. And I've got the other half. My mother looked surprised. You don't have to. I gently pushed the receipt back toward the center of the table. We're choosing to. There's a difference. She understood exactly what I meant. As we walked out into the cool evening air, I realized something that would stay with me forever. Setting boundaries hadn't destroyed my family. It had revealed which relationships were worth rebuilding. The hardest word I ever said was no. Ironically, that single word became the reason our family finally had a chance to become honest. So now I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were in my position, would you have refused to pay the $22,000 from the very beginning, or would you have helped your family one last time? Let me know what you would have done.